Hey, it's Amy Pearson from beingamytheblog.com here with an update about the anxiety that I've been reporting on over the last couple of weeks. I had been sharing videos about how I've been dealing with some pretty major anxiety and the theory that this anxiety is kind of coming at me because I have set the intention in my life to create more space for peace and create overall just more space in general. And so I'm happy to report that this week has been pretty good. I haven't had a lot of anxiety. I felt pretty chill, pretty peaceful. The anxiety that I do experience has been so minimal compared to what I've dealt with in the past. And so I feel pretty good about that. And I really feel like that has been because I've been using this technique of letting go, which is a technique that I learned from the book called Letting Go by David Hawkins, which is really about noticing when you feel emotional, any kind of emotional pain, and turning off your thoughts about it and really just turning inward and feeling that feeling until it either dissipates or it changes. What I've been noticing as I've been doing this technique is that I'll feel some kind of shift in my body. So, and a lot of times I'll yawn or sigh when I'm at this point where I've experienced a shift. And it doesn't always mean that the emotion goes away, but it does feel like there's something moving. So that's been happening, and I'm not kidding myself that I will never feel anxiety again, but I definitely have experienced a lot more peace over the week. So that is really good news, and I feel ready to share more about the work of David Hawkins because several weeks ago now, maybe a month, I was turned on to this concept called the map of consciousness. And I learned about that through this book called Power versus Force, which is the first book in a series by David Hawkins. And the idea of this book is really that there are certain emotions that our emotions hold a certain frequency, and there are lower emotions. I'm not saying they're bad, but they're lower frequency emotions that David Hawkins says vibrate at vibrations lower than this midpoint 200. And if you're in these emotions, anger, pride, which is, all about ego and I'm comparing yourself to other people and judging others and feeling above others. What are some of them? Let me look up the map. Arrogance is something that would be associated with pride. Let's see, where are you? I know you're here. I should have bookmarked. What are some other lower emotions? Shame is the lowest frequency emotion. So death is calibrated at 0. Shame is calibrated at 20. So here's the map. And so the lower emotions would be shame at 20, guilt at 30, apathy at 50, grief at 75, fear at 100, desire at 125, anger at 150, pride at 175. And then you get to what he found that courage calibrates at 200, and that's sort of it's like a turning point where the energy of the emotions then start to inhabit what he calls power. So any of the emotions below 200 frequency would inhabit force. So what that means is if you are able to kind of embody the emotions that are higher than the 200 calibration, then you are in this frequency of power. So emotions like neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, and then enlightenment. These emotions will emit a frequency of power. So this is why this book is called Power versus Force. And so what he means is that when you're sort of embodying these lower frequency emotions, it's not that it's quote unquote bad or that there's anything wrong. And obviously, as humans, we're all over the map, right? I mean, I'm experiencing emotions, anger and fear, or 1 minute, and then I could be in courage another, or I could be in acceptance or neutrality, and this could all happen within the space of an hour with me. But what he means is kind of like, where are you, like, at an average? Like, where are you on average? But even in those spaces of time, like say I'm going all over the map in an hour, there are certain emotions like fear. If I'm acting from that space of fear, which calibrates at 150, which is in the sort of the frequency of force, then I am less effective in the world than if I could get myself to a calibration of neutrality, which calibrates at the frequency of 250, which then crosses that midpoint range into power. And so what does he mean by power versus force? What he means is that anything under 200 in this calibration requires you to push and control and force. And anytime you are behaving from a frequency of force, you are generating this counter force, right? Like, so I shared an example of this when I sent an email to a bunch of parents while I was in the frequency of anger and fear. And sure enough, I received an email back from a parent who disagreed with me. And it was okay. Like, actually, it was a helpful experience to have that kind of experience. But if I would have sent that email from a frequency that was within the realm of power, I would have probably gotten my point across a lot more effectively. And so when we're in the frequency of power, we're attractive, we're magnetic, we're, people want to listen and want to be a part of whatever it is that we're engaged in. It's like there's this magnetic attractive quality. It doesn't generate this counter force, because when you're in the frequency of power, it calibrates at this frequency of truth, and truth, right, is powerful, whereas anything underneath the 200 range would calibrate at this frequency that is further away from truth. And so I think it's amazing. And how he calibrated this, how he learned to calibrate this, is essentially through muscle testing, applied kinesiology. And it's interesting because as a Martha Beck coach and a master coach, and someone who trains on behalf of Martha Beck, one of the things that I learned was this thing called the arm test, where you are able to find that if you're saying something true, your arm will stay strong when someone tries to push it down. If you're saying something false, your arm will be weak when someone tries to push it down. And this is something that you can test yourself, although you have to be someone who calibrates at 200 or above in order for it to be effective. But it's really based on that. And what Hawkins was able to discover is that he, through extensive research and scientific study, is that this is you can replicate these results. So what he did was he had large groups of people hold up an envelope, and inside the envelope was a packet of artificial sweetener. And then no one knew what they had in the envelope, but universally everyone tested weak because the sweetener is not healthy for your body. And then I don't know what he had. He had something that maybe it was like raw sugar. I don't know. I can't remember, but something that calibrated strong was hidden in an envelope, and universally everyone was able to. Their arm was strong. So what he found, and this is really fascinating, is that this arm test method works for anything. It works for, like, you can go back and you can like he was able to do this to test whether something is true or false throughout history. And then he was able to, and then he created this methodology to then calibrate sort of along a continuum frequencies of truth. And that's how he was able to associate these calibrations with emotions. It's so cool. And so you can do this with food. You can do this with just like medicine. You can do this with people who are like news media. You can do this. You can test true or false. And it's something that you can actually do to kind of determine, whether something's good for your body or not good for your body, whether a person's speaking truth, books that you read, movies that you watch. It's fascinating. So it's basically the strategy is like to be able to test for true or false, or to be able to test for yes or no. So you can't do it to like in the future, but you can do it on anything that's happened in the past. So it's almost like he's been able to, through this methodology, be able to tap into universal consciousness, really. And so this is really the basis for the map of consciousness. And it's so interesting. I want to share an example of how this worked for me last week. So I've been sharing a lot about my dad. My dad is, he's really my greatest teacher because he's someone who has a lot of volatile emotions. He can be very charming, but he can also be someone who is very volatile. Is that the right way to say it? And it was interesting because over the weekend, my son had a tournament in Klamath Falls, and my dad came out to watch the games. And it started out that he was in a very dark mood. And it was interesting for me to see him and be around him while he had this dark mood, because it kind of was like, wow, this was really what I was living with as a child, was kind of the volatile moods that my dad and my mom had. And I was thinking, gosh, this is actually pretty fascinating to experience this now as an adult, because it's been a while since I've seen him. And I remember one day my husband was golfing, and it was just me and my oldest daughter and my dad, and we went to dinner. He was in such a pissy mood because I think he was annoyed at my husband for golfing and not being with him, and he had driven all this way and he was bored and da-da-da. And it was so fascinating because my first reaction dealing with this volatile mood of his and this like really all this negativity was anger. I was like feeling so angry, like that he was acting this way. And I wanted to do sort of what I usually do, which is kind of just get angry and sort of, push against his mood with my own anger. Really, that's been my pattern. And sort of like, you can't intimidate me, sort of, I'm just going to get angry and I'm going to be just as pissy as you. Really, that's been kind of my pattern in dealing with his moods, is what I've realized. And so as we were kind of hanging out, the dinner took a long time. There were no tables. We had to sit outside. He didn't want to go outside. We found a table in the hotel. And it was just like, he was just, nothing was working out for him. And he let us know it. And I just wanted, it was interesting. I was just like really angry. But what I did was, instead of reacting from that place of anger, doing what I usually do, which is, say something pissy back or, do something in anger towards him, I just stayed quiet and I allowed myself some space to feel my feelings of anger in the moment when I was with him. And I I just kind of continued to do that throughout that whatever hour and a half that we were together. And I tried to just stay in positivity as I was doing that. Like, just kind of, okay, I'm feeling anger. I kind of was just checking in with my body and feeling the feeling, but not reacting from that space and staying in positivity. And it was interesting because I felt that I was really able to be in acceptance, really, and be in acceptance for, his moods, and not get like kind of pulled down to his emotional level. And interestingly, this is fascinating to me. Eventually, by the end of our time together, Alice and I were in, I would say, maybe acceptance or neutrality or some above 200 frequency emotion, because I was able to just continue to just like let go of whatever those lower frequency emotions were. And by the end of the dinner, he was in a really great mood. Like it was really sweet. He had a really sweet interaction with my daughter, and he was like kind of like this version of him that I know and love, where he's really kind of like in this mood where he's joking and trying to make people laugh, and I could tell that by the end his mood had completely changed. His energy had changed. And we were all just feeling really light and happy. And so that was really powerful for me to experience. Really, it was the first time I think that I've been very consciously aware of the power of staying in those higher frequency emotions using the strategy of letting go. And it's funny too, because what it reminds me of is years ago, I had a friend who was in the coaching world, and she did work with horses, not like like riding horses, but more like working with horses as a coach to have horses teach you about your energy. It's a form of equus coaching. And I hadn't done much of it. I got to do a little of it, but I hadn't done a lot of it. And she had done more. And I remember we were in this restaurant, and she had her daughter with her. And her daughter was acting out and kind of being just, like being a kid, being a moody kind of little girl and not behaving very well. And my friend was not reacting to it in the way that I would have as a mother. And what I realize now is that she was really trying to hold her energy. She was trying to stay in something like acceptance versus anger. And at that time, I was totally judging her because I was thinking to myself, you need to take that kid outside. And, I don't know, like, I think maybe back then I think maybe one of the reasons why I felt uncomfortable and a little judgy was that I kind of felt like she was not being sincere, because I felt like she was angry, but she was trying not to be angry, and then she was just being non-reactive. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but at the time I was judging her. And now I realize that she was actually, in her parenting, she was trying to embody what I had done with my dad, which is stay in this, instead of getting pulled down by someone else's dark mood, she was working on staying in either neutrality or acceptance. And that's interesting to me. I don't know if at that moment she was also letting go of her anger, but my impression was that she was angry and she was really just trying not, like she was bypassing it. So I think there's a difference. Like, it's not about bypassing your emotions, those dark moods, right? It's really about acknowledging them and feeling them and turning towards them and even giving them love. So that you can move forward and be in a higher frequency mood. And back then, that's what she was doing, and I didn't realize it. So good for her, right? But I can see the power of this, in so many areas of life. I can definitely see it as how it shows up in business. I think a lot of us notice that we have, for those of us who are entrepreneurs, and we're doing our marketing, you can ask yourself, are you marketing from a frequency of power, or are you marketing from a frequency of force, which is, very fear-based, shame-based, pride-based, ego-based, right? So you can ask yourself, because if you're able to market or do sales from this frequency of acceptance, or, neutrality even, or, love, then you're going to have so much more of an impact, right, in your work. And I can see this in parenting and in relationships. So it's really revolutionizing my life. And I just feel like I need to share it with the world. So this can be kind of dense. Like the first few chapters are very scientific because he's going over his methodology. But I feel like it's the kind of book that you can get into. You don't need to necessarily read it from front to back. You can start at different points in the book. This is another one that I've read that's this one really gets into the map of consciousness and really goes into each emotion and sort of the impact of those emotions. So I'm on my fourth book by David Hawkins, and I can't get enough. I mean, I think these books are really, really important for anyone who's interested in spiritual growth, and really climbing up that map so that you can raise your sort of everyday frequency higher and higher. So I talked for a while. I hope it was helpful. If you liked it, give it a like, give it a comment, give it a share, and let me know your thoughts. If you're familiar with the work of David Hawkins, I'm so surprised that more people aren't aware of his work. I'm really surprised that I hadn't been exposed to it sooner. So have a wonderful day. Know that the people, the relationships, your work, it's all just this opportunity for you to learn and to grow and to be able to move up in that frequency of consciousness into those very powerful vibrations. We can change the world from this place of power. It's pretty amazing. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.